Welcome everyone to Saturday at Clear Mountain. We have a few special guests today. One, we have Jayanta visiting from Germany for the next 4 months. Jayanta, can we embarrass you? So please welcome her and say hello to her, make her feel good and cared for while she's here. Noah's back and just underwent a surgery, a brain surgery, and is back on his feet. We're so glad you're back and doing all right, Noah, and just hope people can kind of say hello to him and we can care as a community for those of us who are going through difficult times. And importantly, one more special guest. Two more.
My mom and my stepdad back there in red and close to red. Yep.
So can we get 3 big sadhus for Paula for giving birth to Ajahn Kovilo? Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And Arnie for helping give spiritual birth to the current incarnation of Ajahn Kovilo. He's a philosophy professor, so has a lot to say in a good way too. A few announcements, and for those we'll pass to the community coordinators.
We wanted to announce a couple of new volunteers that have stepped into certain roles. So I'm going to start with WhatsApp. Is Andrew here today? If you are, could you stand? I don't think he is. Andrew is stepping in as one of our WhatsApp leads. And then Fernando, are you on with us on Zoom today? If you are, raise your little hand. I'm not sure if he is. Fernando is also stepping in to our WhatsApp admin positions. We just wanted to welcome both of them as part of our volunteer crew.
And I have so many, I wrote them down. Christine, is Christine here today? No, she has stepped into the hospitality role. And we have Katie. Where's Katie? Katie is our new librarian, and she's got wonderful ideas, so talk to her about the books. And we have Dawn, who is our new Saturday manager, as well as Nitnoy, and I don't think she's here today. So those are the changes for our Saturday teams. I think Jeremy has. Where's Jeremy? Jeremy.
Okay, I can announce those if you want. Okay, all right. And additionally, actually, can we get those volunteers to stand? So Katie, stand if you would. Dawn, sorry to embarrass you a little bit. And additionally, we have Dave Arterburn was serving as our secretary on Friends of Clear Mountain Board, and he's going to be stepping down at the moment. And Rahul is stepping up in his stead. Rahul, thank you. And additionally, Katie was serving as the treasurer of Clear Mountain, Friends of Clear Mountain's board, and Allison, who's on Zoom in the center there, will be stepping back in as treasurer. And they all, Dave and Katie, just served such important roles during their place there, and we're delighted that they're still with us and helping out in various capacities, and delighted at the new members as well. So if we can get 3 big sadhus for all the people who are stepping in and helping care for this growing community, that would be great.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
And for those who don't know what sadhu means,
It means that's great, everybody. You did a great job.
additionally, if you happen to be going to Abhayagiri Monastery, which you all should, then talk to Katie, our librarian. Raise your hand again, Katie, because they send books up to us, so we'll want to see if you can bring books back. Additionally, if you have spare books you'd like to donate to Clear Mountain for free distribution, Katie's your person. And all the books in the back, if you're new, are just freely available. Please take them in. Additionally, the community coordinators, and if all 3 of you could stand, Christina, Bonnie, and Jeremy, this is a new role we've just really been fleshing out over the last year so that the monastics don't become kind of overwhelmed, and we really tend to a growing and beautiful group. It's a lot to organize 80, 90 people on a Saturday, plus all the other things that are happening. So the community coordinators will be kind of serving to coordinate volunteer activities, as well as if you have concerns coming up around dynamics in the community, if you have suggestions for things you think would be done better. You know, a recent suggestion that we took on was pinning the monastics when they're speaking, so all of you could see even if we're down here, little things like that. Just talk to the community coordinators and they'll be able to bring stuff to us when it's relevant, etc., and hopefully attend to those small wrinkles that are inevitable in a community like this. So it's been a large role to step into, but an essential one, and really important for us being able to scale going forward. So one more sadhu, people. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you. Finally, we have a set of senior monastics, very, very senior. We're not going to tell you who they are, but if you ask around, you'll probably find out, who might be coming probably in the middle of this month. We don't have confirmation on the visas yet, but there is a potential event that we need to start planning for regardless, assuming that it'll happen. So there's a volunteer sign-up sheet on the book table. Is that correct, Bonnie? Okay. Talk to Bonnie or talk to Bonnie or see the sheet on the back table after this if you'd like to sign up to volunteer, and that will be May 15th, which is a Thursday. So the Thursday after this next one, in the evening, in Blodell, if they come and are willing, there will be a really, really special event, and we'll need volunteers for it. So if you're willing to possibly maybe with the Theravada and Nietzsche fine print volunteer, talk to Bonnie or sign up. Thank you. Okay. We also could use one more AV volunteer. This team is essential in terms of spreading out this community to those who aren't just in Seattle. Jayanta was able to access us through our AV efforts, etc. Having another person to help out our AV team would be really, really helpful. So if you are feeling inspired and want to kind of help them out, then talk to Cheryl, Milo, Trevor in the back, or to Bonnie here. And finally, St. Mark's has been so caring with offering us the space every week for free for over the last 4 years. We were in a park before that, and it's significantly warmer in here. If every now and again we try to attend a St. Mark's Mass just to bolster that relationship, so tomorrow at 9 a.m. I'll be going to their Mass over in St. Mark's Cathedral, not the gym. So if people want to join just to honor our relationship, you're welcome. And some of us will be meeting at Top Pot Donuts nearby at 8:15 to talk about Dhamma. You can have a donut if you want, and we'll be picking up donuts to bring to St. Mark's. So just an opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, so the first Saturday of every month, we have an opportunity, people have an opportunity to take the 3 refuges and the 5 precepts. The request for that begins on page 126 in the chanting book. And the 3 refuges of taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha really is the foundational trajectory of a Buddhist life. So you have the Buddha, who's the exemplar and the basically symbol for awakening, which is what we're inclining towards every moment and in a whole life. The Dhamma, the truth, and the Sangha, this principle of community, and specifically wise community. So taking refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, and then the 5 precepts, which are the foundation of a Buddhist ethical life. And they're all framed in terms of undertaking the training rule in these things. So it's totally voluntary, and you can read ahead. We're not trying to trick you into anything. And we'll start with maybe Miles doing the invitation, and people can join in with Miles, I think.
So we can bow 3 times, and then we can do the chant on page 126. Bow. Mayang Bante Tisaranena saha pancha silani yachama dutiyampi mayang bante tisaranena saha pancha silani yachama tatiyampi mayang bante tisaranena saha pancha silani yachama.
Then over onto page 128, and I'll recite this first Pali bit 3 times, and you can repeat after me 3 times. I'm really listening to the people around you and harmonizing your voices. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
And then just back and forth with this refuge in wakefulness, truth, and love. Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tisaranakammanang nititang.
Amabante.
And I'll do these in Pali, and you can repeat after me, and then the English. Panatipata veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
Panatipata veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature.
Adinna dana veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
Adina dana veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which has not been given.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which is not given.
Kame sumichachara veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
Kame sumichachara veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from sexual misconduct.
I undertake the precept to refrain from sexual misconduct.
Musawada veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
Musawada veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from lying.
I undertake the precept to refrain from lying.
Sura meraya majjapamadhatana veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
Sura meraya majjapamadhatana veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from consuming intoxicating drink and drugs which lead to carelessness.
I undertake the precept to refrain from consuming intoxicating drink and drugs which lead to carelessness.
Imani pancha sikapadani samadhiyami. Silena sugating yanti, silena boga sampada, silena nibuting yanti tasama silang visodaye.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Okay, so we can all sit meditation together for about 15 minutes. Okay. And when we come to sit meditation, the first thing that we do is set the body, get the bodily posture in a position which is conducive to the mental posture that we're trying to cultivate. So we want a body which is upright, but not uptight. And so to do that, you can imagine just lengthening your spine. You can imagine a string with a gentle weight at the bottom, pulling down the bottom of the spine. And then another string at the top of the head, gently pulling up. And so we've got this elongated central column. And then around this uprightness, just allow all the rest of your body to relax. Just like a coat on a coat rack. And people can feel free to use whatever meditation object you'd like. And if you'd care to, I'll give a few words about another way to practice mindfulness of breathing, which is really one of the easiest ways to come to meditation, and it's one which the Buddha himself practiced and taught. So this variant, we're going to be looking at the breath in 4 different parts of the body. So bring your mind, allow the mind to drop down into the belly, not thinking about the belly, not necessarily visualizing the body, but belly. But just seeing that you can feel from the belly. And if you want to help stay awake, you can actually, on the in-breath, as you feel from this belly space, you can say, listening on the in-breath and being on the out-breath. Listening and being. Just knowing the whole in-breath as we listen in the belly here, and the whole out-breath. Just being. In the belly, from the belly. Just expanding on the in-breath and contracting on the out-breath. When you're at home, you can stay in any of these spots for as long as you want, but I'll just introduce the next base for the mind, and that's moving our attention from the belly up into the lungs. And feeling the whole lungs. Again, knowing the beginning, middle, and end of the in-breath, with, if you want, the meditation word, listening. And then as the lungs deflate, contract, There's the whole out breath, just being. Just listening and being in the lungs, from the lungs, the whole lungs. You can adjust that uprightness of posture to allow the lungs to expand to their maximum. And from the lungs, we'll move up to the third base. This is the whole throat, the whole windpipe from just above the lungs all the way to the back of the throat. Just feeling the whole in-breath, listening to the slightly cooler air that is coming in on the in-breath, and just being with the slightly warmer air going through the throat, the windpipe on the out-breath. Full in-breath, full out-breath. Knowing in the throat, from the throat. Here's the final base that we'll introduce this morning is the whole mouth and nose. So listening to and feeling all the nasal cavities from the tip of the nose all the way through the passages in the nose, nasal membrane, and in the mouth. And then just being with a slightly warmer breath as it exhales. And just spend the next few minutes either cycling through these at whatever rate you want. You can do one breath in the belly, one in the lungs, one in the throat, one in the nose. If you're feeling sluggish, that'll keep the mind awake and engaged. Or if the mind is restless, you can just stay in one of these bases. Just listening and being, and allowing the mind to settle and still in any one of these spots. in the last few minutes of really any meditation, but especially if you're meditating in a group. It can be really nice and helpful to actually practice loving kindness. And we've been staying awake and listening and being with the breath, so we can keep that up and just shift the mantra. Maybe come to the heart space. So just inside of the lungs there. And on an in-breath, you can think, may I be well. So thinking that thought as you feel from the heart. And really allowing for the truth of that. This is why all of us are here. It's because we want to be happy. So on that in-breath, may I be happy. And on the out-breath, may all beings be happy. And you can just allow that wish for the happiness of all beings to extend above, below, around, and everywhere. There doesn't need to be a limit or any kind of boundaries. The mind doesn't have to have any walls to it. So this is a time when we can let down the walls. And allow this wish for our own well-being and for the well-being and happiness of all beings to just exist, we can marinate in this. May I be well, and may all beings be well.
Now there's an opportunity for all of us to join together in requesting a Dhamma talk, if you'd like. It's on page 124 of the chanting book. And if you feel inspired, we can begin with bowing 3 times. Bow. Brahma Jaloka Dipati Sahampati Katanjaliyana Diwaram Ayachata Santi Dasata Paraja Kajatika Dese tu Dhammam Anukam Pimam Bhajam.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasahami. So I'm going to suggest that we start off doing a little bit more chanting. And people, if you're so inclined, can actually keep your chanting book out, because we might have a couple of different rounds of chanting. But if you just want to sit and listen or sit and be, that's totally fine as well. But if you go to page 43, this is the suffusion with the divine abidings. And if you're on Zoom, there's a link in the chat. And do read ahead. We'll be just doing that first paragraph that's about loving kindness. So the first third of the page on page 43. And read ahead, make sure we're not tricking you or trying to get you to convert or anything that you don't want to do. But this is really all just about love. It's all just about kindness. So if you have any hesitancy, thinking that this is something weird, you can just relax and be with some of this love. And if you want to chant along, it's a great thing. So I'll just begin by chanting that first line in brackets. This is what the leader begins by saying, and that starts the pitch, and then we can all follow and listen together. Now let us make the four boundless qualities shine forth. I will abide, pervading one quarter, with a heart imbued with loving kindness. Likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth. So above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself, I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a heart imbued with loving kindness, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. Okay. So I thought to do that because my mom is here, and she is, in addition to many other skills, she is a singer, and she is a knitter, and she's a sewer, and she's a weaver, and she's a retired OBGYN. So lots of hats, but especially singing. And a big part of the way that we grew up, she raised us, me and my brother and sister, as Unitarians. And I was visiting her and my stepdad this past week, and the reason I went down there was to give a talk at their local Unitarian church. So that's what we were raised in, this Unitarian faith. And the title of the talk was going to be, introducing Unitarians to Buddhism, and the name of the talk was going to be Buddhism, Unitarianism without the U, Y-O-U. But so much of what my mom enjoys about Unitarianism is coming together and harmonizing voices, and it really can be a beautiful thing. And it's great to hear everybody here do the invitation to a Dhamma talk, which is just about as musical as we get in monastic Theravada Buddhism. There's a list specifically for monastics of the 5 reasons not to practice singing. So those are that when a monk or a nun focuses too much on singing, then they fall in love with and become infatuated with their own voice. Or the second reason is that others can become infatuated and fall in love with your voice. And if you've ever heard Ajahn Nisabo sing the Invitation to the Devas, you'll totally know. He swoons people. And it's impressive. It's impressive. The third reason is that, at least in the time of the Buddha, and still today in Theravada countries, the lay people, so the non-monastics, might criticize and complain, what are these monks doing? Enjoying this art of a non-renunciant, so this kind of sensual art. How are the monks practicing this as well? And it can become competitive in monastic traditions that really lean into the beauty of song, the beauty of music. It can become competitive, and the monks or the nuns who can chant better or sing better, it can become a bit competitive. And that's all of us would have to work on that individually, but that's just one of the dangers that the Buddha put forth of why monks don't sing. The other one is that it's a bad example for future generations, because it can create for future generations of monks. And there's a 5th one about, maybe we'll remember by the end. But at any rate, this only applies to those of you who are trying to take the 8 precepts, one of which is, for some period of time, giving up things which, just testing yourself. One of them is we don't eat after noon. So Ajahn Nisabo and I, and any Theravada monastics, we've been practicing this. Neither of us have eaten solid food after noon for 15, 20 years, and we're doing just fine enough. And then one of them is giving up other things, other forms of entertainment. We don't watch movies. We don't watch movies. And these other things, what can we do without? It leads to a simplification, and you realize it's not all about suffering. There are the Four Noble Truths, the first of which is acknowledging that there is suffering. But then the Buddha goes on to these three other Noble Truths, that there is a cause of suffering, unhealthy craving, there's a cessation to it by giving up that unhealthy craving, and there's a path. And we can also look at the Buddhist path as one of getting better at happiness. The Buddha said, when you realize that by giving up a lesser happiness, a more coarse happiness, for a subtle happiness, when you give up a lesser happiness for a higher happiness, a more subtle happiness, a less harmful happiness, then the wise person will give up the more coarse happiness for a more refined, subtle, harmless happiness. Because it costs less, everybody. It costs less if you can just get all your, happiness and joy and fun from just sitting quietly in a room alone, which is great. It doesn't cost anything. So, thought specifically would talk about chanting. And this is something new. So most Westerners, very much myself included, we come to Buddhism or to a meditation group because we want meditation. But then there are all these other symbols and signs and gestures of respect or devotion or faith, which do exist in Buddhism. And you come to a place like this, and we're not just a meditation group. We listen to the Dhamma together, we talk Dhamma together, and we do these things like bowing or taking these different formulas of what we all chanted together, these 5 precepts. And when you chant it together, you're really instantiating. These rules have been formulated by the Buddha in exactly these words in Pali. And we're just continuing this noble lineage and ennobling lineage. So you can tap back into these chants are many of them, including that refuge chant and the suffusion with the divine bidings, go all the way back to the Buddha himself. So you can get this idea of going back to a source and really connecting with enlightened people, men, women, monastics, non-monastics, who've been living these teachings and loving these teachings and realizing these teachings for 2,600 years. So we chant together, and really how you can determine as you expand out, as you realize that meditation is great and it can be a foundation, it can be a central pillar of your spiritual life. Many people will find, I certainly find, that it's not enough. If you're trying to live your whole life in a way which is increasingly sensitive, then meditation is just however long it is. Even if you're doing an hour in the morning, hour in the evening, you've got 22 other hours in the day. And what are you doing? How are you relating to the people around you, to your family? How are you speaking to the people around you? And these gestures, these seemingly religious ceremonies, do have a source. They can bring some uplift. There is a place for intoning the words, wise words of people who came before us. So, chanting. Why and how? And this, what we chanted, the suffusion with the divine abidings, in addition to being a great source text for a beautiful antidote to hatred or anger or ill will or even just irritation, you can chant this rather than giving way to really the insanity, the temporary insanity that is anger and hatred and certainly cruelty. Hopefully everyone admit that that's hopefully temporary. It is temporary insanity. And when you memorize something like this, or even if you just memorize the word love or metta and bring that to your heart, make that your mantra when all of the critical voices in your head are rightly seeing fault with the world. You can bring this sanity that yes, there are so many faults in the world, there's so many faults in society, and we're not trying to numb ourselves to these things, to dumb ourselves to these things, but there's way more truth to that. There's way more truth to the universe, and certainly towards helpful communication with the people who we agree with, our family members, the people who we don't agree with, our family members in society. We need to remember all the other truth of people can't hear us when we're coming from hatred. So love, love, love. I will abide with the mind, with the heart imbued with loving kindness. These are great directions for shifting the insane mind to see more sanity, to feel more sanity, to come back to this heart space. And none of this is strictly intellectual. So much of it, if you can, is being embodied. So 3 benefits of chanting, as with singing. There is a communal benefit, there is a physiological, anatomical benefit, and there is a psychological benefit to chanting. So with the social benefit, as you noticed, the lead chanter will chant what's in brackets, and that's just to get everyone in tune. We're all listening to the people around us. And you come to a monastery, and there's no, like, you don't have to take a test whether you can actually harmonize with anybody else. There's no entrance fee that they stop you at the gate of the monastery, and can you hold this pitch? Can you harmonize with a single other person? There's none of that. So we get a bunch of off-tune, off-pitch, young boys and men. And it's something that when you live in community, you really have to. We're doing lots of chanting. We're probably doing at least an hour of group chanting every day. And so to be able to practice this harmonization, and it does happen, even if you think you're tone deaf, that can be a real thing, but you can even train within the spectrum of that just through listening. So this mantra of listening. So we do that beginning. Now let us make the 4 boundless qualities shine forth. In this first line, I will abide. This brings us from the social benefit, the social aspect, where we're harmonizing, we're listening to the people around us, we're making sure that we're not too loud, our voices aren't too soft, we're speaking in a way which the Buddha said is just right, not too loud, not too soft. That's the social benefit. And we come into this place of the physiological benefit. So I will abide. The Pali is viharati. So viharati, some of you might recognize part of this word, is vihara, which can mean just a physical abiding, a physical home. So part of our more real home is our physical bodies. So coming into our physical bodies. And the next lines is pervading 1/4 with a heart imbued with loving kindness, likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth. And oftentimes the traditional exegesis of this will be thinking in the north, south, east, west directions, or in front of you, to your right, behind you, to the left. But the word dissa in the Pali just means apart. So you can actually, as we're trying to embody our chanting, which I don't know what percentage of you feel embodied while you're chanting or feel embodied while you're singing, but it's a whole aspect which can add an entire new dimension to the way that you bring yourself to chanting. And so we can imagine these 4 directions or these 4 spaces as just what we did in the guided meditation. So bringing the mind into the first direction, the first space of the belly. The belly is part of our breathing, part of our chanting, part of our singing. Allowing the mind, I will abide with a mind or a heart. They're synonymous in Buddhism, and I'm glad this version has heart, because there are other versions, there are some monastic communities that don't like the heart here, and they'll translate chitta as mind. So they'll take like a bunch of stickers, and they'll get some volunteer to put like mind over heart a bunch. And so different communities, I always have to check the chanting book. Is this heart or mind? I can't tell, but this is heart, which is great, because that's a great place to come to chanting from chanting from. So knowing, I will abide with a heart imbued with loving kindness. The first 1/4, in the belly. Likewise, the second, bringing the mind into the lungs, bringing the mind into the lungs. The third 1/4, the third part, this throat, from the back of the mouth all the way down to the top of the lungs. And really embodying this. This is not an intellectual exercise. The fourth 1/4, the fourth aspect, the whole vocal, or specifically mouth and nasal apparatus. And I think for many, even great, well, certainly for people who like singing, it's not necessarily the case that they're embodied. Singing can be a very heady or brainy activity. But I'll just invite all of you to bring your mind, bring your heart into your hands. Can you feel your hands, even just one hand, and you can put it hand up, palm up, on your knee, on your lap. Can you feel your hand from your hand? And hopefully you'll feel whatever is there, whether it's heat, coolness, wind, some kind of tingle, which is perhaps the blood going through the small veins, the capillaries. Who knows what that tingle is, but you can feel the tingle. This is the truth of impermanence, and it's a truth of embodied presence. And you can touch your index finger to your thumb, and there is a correlation. You're not imagining this. There is some correlation with just what is actually happening with your finger, your two fingers, and what you feel in your heart, in your mind. There is this correlation. It's not imagination. So too with the tingliness. And so feeling the heart, feeling from the belly, feeling from the lungs, feeling from the throat, and feeling this vocal apparatus. So we'll invite us now to chant that second verse. This first one was all about loving kindness, which is the first of the divine abidings, the boundless qualities, and the second one is compassion. So loving kindness, or metta, is a good quality to always have. In compassion, karuna, is what happens when loving kindness meets the world, meets the suffering of the world. So this is certainly an aspect that we need to bring into our path, into our hearts, because we ourselves suffer and the people around us suffer. So having this space for compassion. And so we'll chant this next verse. It starts with, I will abide pervading one quarter with the heart imbued with compassion, that paragraph. And we'll invite all of you to embody each of these different quarters as we do it. The first quarter is the belly. The second quarter is the lungs. The next quarter is the throat. And the fourth quarter is the mouth. And we'll just finish that paragraph. And I'll just do the intro again. Now let us make the four boundless qualities shine forth. I will abide, pervading one quarter, with a heart imbued with compassion. Likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth. So above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself, I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a heart imbued with compassion, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. So as we move to the next lines, and hopefully everybody could begin to feel what that feels like, to feel from the belly as you're chanting, feel from the lungs, feel from the throat, the windpipe, feel from the mouth, to know from this embodied presence. And the next line, so above, below, around, and everywhere, and to all as to myself. This is when we go into the aspect of a psychological training. So here's the mind, and we're moving from just the full embodiment. So with these first steps, we're moving from the physiological awareness to this broader psychological awareness. So above and below, you can imagine that everything from the heart up and below from the heart down. So just full embodiment. So knowing the whole body just in those two lines, so above and below. And the next step is when we go to the level of mind, around and everywhere. And this is when you start to feel that so much of the time, certainly in the West, we often think that the mind is in the brain or the mind is in the head. But then when you start feeling into your hands or into your body, you start realizing that the mind is not in the brain or the mind is not in the head, but the head is inside of the mind. And I'm just talking about first-person felt experience, not talking about the ontology or the truth claims about where consciousness dwells, but just it feels the mind, the heart is bigger than your head. You just have to admit it, everybody. You have to admit it, that your mind and heart are bigger than your skull. And I won't ask for a show of hands of who doesn't believe that, but just feel is that true? Not talking about thinking, but just feeling, because feeling is a truthful aspect of our experience as well. So we're moving around and everywhere into all as to ourselves. And it's not just the case, we might think on default, that the mind is in the body even, but it's that the body is inside of the mind. Our mind is bigger than our bodies, even just on the level of imagining and the degree to which our perception of other people matches the actuality of other people's existences. I can imagine how other people are doing this theory of mind. Other people have minds and hearts, and I can imagine what that's like. The mind is bigger than the body. The mind is bigger than just what we can feel inside. So the body is inside of the mind. So above, below, around, and everywhere. It's just, again, dropping the boundaries as we're doing here. And you can even feel this when you feel that your hands don't feel like they're inside of a latex glove or inside of a balloon, like you could feel the edge of the latex, feel the edge of the balloon. You would think, I can see so clearly my hand. It like stops there on the right and it ends over here on the left, and this is inside this like pinkish thing here, that's me, and everything in between all that is all the rest of the world. But when we feel, that boundary breaks down. It just feels like, from the hand, it feels like a cloud. Where do I stop? Where do you stop? And the world begin. And on the level of mind, you don't have to draw those distinctions. On the level of safety, it's extremely important to have this sense of what is bodily autonomy, where you start, where you stop, and where the world begins. But on a level of heart, and certainly when you're in a safe space, and in a place of seeing how big can the mind become, you're bigger than just this hand. In the next lines, I will abide pervading the all-encompassing world with the heart imbued with compassion, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. And we can look at, as you're judging any Buddhist practice, if all you want from your Buddhism is meditation, that's fine, but I'll give you a touchstone for how you can judge. When you go to a meditation center, you go to a monastery, and you see people bowing or chanting or doing anything that you're not familiar with and don't yet know if you want in your life, or which you might start off as being averse to, is one, the Buddha said, when asked, do you, Buddha, do you believe, I believe that you think that all ascetic practices are good and that no ascetic practice is bad. And the Buddha says, no, that's not true. Any ascetic practice that gives rise to wholesome mental states, like loving kindness and compassion and empathetic joy or gladness and equanimity, if it gives rise to those, then that's a wholesome ascetic practice. And if it decreases unwholesome mind states like selfishness or conceit or anger, unhelpful craving, if it decreases that, that's an ascetic practice you can take on. And then he was asked about practices in general. If a practice that you see in a church, Christian church, Buddhist, whatever, if the practice, when you do it, when you implement it, if it gives rise, as you do it, to wholesome mental states that are bright and make the heart big and do not lead to this mental contraction that I'm right, everybody else is wrong, if they lead to a brightening and a bigness of heart, then experiment. Maybe I can take on this chanting. It doesn't, maybe I can take on the chanting. Maybe this bowing isn't an inherently religious and therefore institutionally degraded show of absolute adherence to the profundity of rites and rituals categorically, but maybe you can use it as a skillful means. Maybe when I bow, I don't have to be bowing to the patriarchy, which we're not advocating, but it's a bowing to that which is most meaningful in our lives. And when you come to here and you hear someone, you can hear it in a church or anywhere, just asking you what is most important in your life, what is highest in your life. So many people just have never thought about that. And we weren't born necessarily with this being imputed into us. What's good, what's highest, what do we believe in is highest in our lives? And when you take up a practice like bowing, you intentionalize that. The first thing we do as monastics when we wake up is we bow 3 times. What are we bowing to? For me, I say, Buddhang saranang gacchami, yava nibbana saranang gacchami. I bow to the Buddha as a symbol for awakening, which, in my belief, is a complete transcendence of greed and anger. Dhammang saranang gacchami. I bow to the Dhamma so as to realize the truth here and now. So to be able to train in the capacity to not be a slave to the compulsion of thinking about the future and thinking about the past with all of my small little likes and dislikes, all of my biases and whatever. I can have a bigger mind that isn't compelled to think all the time, but which can just be in the present moment right now. That's what I'm bowing to when I bow to the Dhamma, first thing in the morning, and then first thing before I go to bed. And I bow to the Sangha. May my life be a benefit to all living beings. So to the Buddha, the symbol of our highest goal, and for me that's Nibbana. May I attain Nibbana as I bow to the Buddha. The Dhamma, I bow to the Dhamma, take refuge in the Dhamma as a symbol for being present here and now. And I bow to the Sangha. May my life be a benefit to all living beings. And that leads to an increase of wholesome mind states for me and a decrease. And it becomes a habit. And even if I'm groggy in the morning, still I bow. And still it's a symbol. And it doesn't, just because some days it is more rote than others, that doesn't make it lose its value. It actually gives it strength if I keep wanting it to have value, if I keep imputing it with value. And similarly with chanting, if when you chant this, or you go back to your church and you sing whatever it is, then yeah, what is it doing to your heart? Is it giving rise to the love that hopefully the chants and the songs that you're chanting, is it giving rise to that in the present moment? And are you embodied? So testing that, this is a touchstone. And a few things, those are just a few things to think about as we chant and as you decide, do you want to bring chanting into your life? Here are some of the whys and the hows of doing it. You make the body. There's this bodily aspect of it. You let the body be upright, that uprightness, but not uptightness, with your hands in this anjali, if you want, a gesture of respect. The body is upright, the lungs are extended, and just with any kind of vocalization, the body is like that, bringing awareness to posture. And then this social aspect, harmonizing with the people around you, and the mental aspect, letting the mind be big. Mahagata is the word, without hostility and without ill will. Abundant, exalted, immeasurable. Can your awareness encompass bigness, bigger than just your belly, bigger than just your lungs, bigger than just your throat, bigger than just your mouth, a heart which is kind to all beings? And with all of that mentalization, perhaps if you were thinking about all that and thinking, this monk is super heady and just want to come back into the body, we'll invite all of us, just as we close, to chant on page 42. This is the Pali. So words very close to what the Buddha spoke. And this is similar to why Catholics chant in Latin. Even if you don't know the meaning, hopefully you learn some of these meanings in Pali, because there is extreme depth in the Pali. But also, it allows you to be less spun up with the meaning, and you can just embody and get to what it's actually pointing to. And if your pronunciation isn't great, no worries. As you practice and listen, you'll get better, and really the spirit is what you bring to it. So, page 42, and we'll do all four, and then the fourth one is actually scooted over to page 44. Andammayang chaturapamanya upasanang karoma sehe metta sahagacena cetasa ekang disang paritawa viharati tata dutiya tata tatiyang tata chatuta itiyu dhammadho tiriya sabhati sabhatataya sabhavanta lokang metta sahagatena cetasa vipulena mahagatena hapamane nahaverena abhayapajena paritawa viharati karuna sahagatena cetasa ekang disang paritawa viharati tata dutiya tata tatiyang tata chatuta itiyu dhammadho tiriya sabbati sabbatataya sabbhavanta lokang karuna sahagatena cetasa vipulena mahagatena apamane nahavere nahabaya pajena paritawa viharati mudita sahagatena cetasa ekang desang paritawa viharati tata dutiyang tata chatiyang tata chatuta itiyo dhammadho tiriya sabbati sabbatataya sabbha vantang lokang mudita sahagatena cetasa vipulena mahagatena apamane nahavere nahabaya pajena paritawa viharati upeka sahagate na cetasa ekang desam paritawa viharati tata dutiyang tata tatiyang tata tatutang itiyo dhammadho tiriya sabbati sabbatataya sabbha vantang lokang upeka sahagatena cetasa vipulena mahagatena apamane nahavere nahabaya pajena paritawa viharati iti.
Annamayam Dhammakataya sadhu karam dadamase. Sadhu, 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 anumodami.
Okay, so we'll have time for questions, or if anyone has a comment, either in person, and I think Miles will bring you a microphone so people on Zoom can hear. If you've got a question on Zoom, you can raise your hand and we can call on you there.
I have a question that's a bit philosophical, and therefore maybe there's some stuff I misunderstand, so correct me if I do. When I read about Indian philosophy, particular Hindu philosophy, citta is considered one of the senses. Mind is a sense separate from the self. Now, this may be one of the big differences between the Indian understanding and the Buddhist understanding, in that there is no self in Buddhism. Can you comment on the translation of citta as mind, mind being seen as a sense separate from the self?
Yeah, so cetas or chitta is translated as mind. In Mahayana Buddhism, they add three more types of consciousness to the 6 that you find in Theravada Buddhism. And yeah, it gets a bit more complicated in Mahayana Buddhism. And in Theravada, you'll hear different teachers talk about chitta or mind or heart in different ways. And as you said, there's one of the aspects of Theravada Dharma is this not self characteristics. And Ajahn Thanissaro makes a good case that it's better held as a not self strategy more than an ontological no soul truth claim. Because you can't really, until you've achieved some level of awakening, prove or know firsthand that there's a self, a deep down capital S self or not. So you're taking it on as a strategy. As you look internally, where is their self? Certainly it's not in any part of the brain. Neuroscientists will confirm that. And certainly you can lose most of your limbs while still having a felt sense of self and still having a mind. So you look in the body and just a strategy, just keep asking, where is the self? Where is the self? And similarly, which emotion is yourself or which mood is yourself? And it just is so ephemeral. But rather than trying to say there is a capital S self or not, which every form of Buddhism really will categorically say there isn't, but this strategy form, looking at it, is what's the effect when you take on a belief there is a capital S self, and does it increase conceit? Does it increase confusion? And yeah, seeing as you get kind of peel away the different layers of self, and certainly as you peel away the unhelpful aspects of your habit and personality, then yeah, it's easy. You want to give away those things because they just suck for you and others. So, Ajahn, what do you want to say more on that? And I told Ajahn Nisabha's mom that I wouldn't say the word sucks in a Dhamma talk, so apologies.
Yeah, no, Ajahn Jayasara once said that as the abbot of Nanachat, the two most common questions he received was, where's the bathroom, and please, what is the chitta? and it is an interesting question. It's used in different ways in the Pali. And yeah, the sixth sense space of where all the senses converge. There's a sutta where Venerable Sariputta says that. They all converge in the mind. But, you know, the Ajahn Kovilo's point of restraint around this teaching of anatta, about a not self strategy of just letting go. And then once you come to, Longtam Mahabua said, when you think in terms of sila and samadhi, virtue and concentration, you think in terms of self, like building a beautiful self. When you think in terms of wisdom, you think in terms of not self. And nibbana is beyond all concept. And in the end, knowing, the idea that you could know self as an object of awareness is illogical. It's like a knife trying to cut itself, you know. That being said, there does seem to be some acknowledgement. You know, the Buddha said, "Pabasarang chittang akanduke hikile sehi." The mind is radiant, the heart is radiant, the tainted by visiting defilements. And you can feel that as you practice, something begins to glow in an embodied place, often in the chest, that's feels more and more trustworthy and that you follow, but there's not this sense of I around it. It's just kind of a rising up of knowledge, of resonance, of rightness. And I think attuning to that is one of the most meaningful parts of this path. And yeah, so I'd say, you know, we do let go of this idea of I and me and mine as unnecessary, but you are coming closer to something resonant, meaningful, intimate, and yeah, pure as you practice. And chitta has resonance with that idea. Ajahn Sucitta says that chitta should be listened to but not believed. And he compares it to a pond, and often it can be ruffled with emotion and stuff, but when it's calm, it reflects perfectly, and that's where wisdom can come from. So.
We have some Zoom questioners. Kathy?
Yes, thank you. My name's Kathy, and I'm from BC, Canada. And I just wanted to draw your attention to the fact that our brand new, recently elected, this past Monday, Prime Minister is visiting President Trump this Tuesday. And I would hope that you could dedicate your merit and your metta to this event, and that it has a good outcome for both our countries. So just bring that into your awareness, and thank you for letting me say this.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Kathy. And some of you might have lacuna, little holes in your heart when you say, so above and below, around and everywhere. You might have a little hole in that everywhere. Into all as to myself, there might be a little hole in that. You just can't permeate your metta. You can't suffuse your metta into this kind of empty vacuum. But yeah, what does that do when you have a hole in your heart? And it certainly doesn't have an effect if it's someone on the level of world politics. We'll likely never meet any world level politician. But when we have a hole in our heart, that affects us. So, yeah, no pressure. But yeah, a whole heart is can be more powerful. And experiment with that. See if that's true. If it's more bright. So yeah, thank you for that recommendation and thought, Kathy. Is there anybody else on Zoom, or do we go back to in person?
We do have Shirley McDonald.
Okay,
On
we'll go to
Zoom.
Shirley.
Hello, thank you for that lovely talk. It's always so good to be with you. And thanks, I think it was Kathy who asked that question, because I've been working on this hole in my heart for people in power who I think are doing harm, and that I tend to react to quite strongly. And I've been trying to work on that hole in my heart so my question's about mudita. And I can get some compassion for those who I perceive to be in power and doing things, or have great wealth and are actually doing things that are harmful. What about mudita? Should I rejoice at their success or not? Or should I just simply rejoice that they may have done something nice, small thing, or being kind to a small dog or something, and rejoicing in maybe if they've got some goodness. But I do find it hard to actually really rejoice at their happiness if I perceive their success as putting in the position where they're actually they've got this power, they've got this wealth, and I perceive it that they're using it to harm the planet and the beings in it. So that's my question about mudita. Thank you.
So who here has been thinking a bit about politics recently? So thank you. Yeah, who would know? Thank you, Shirley, and good to see you from the UK. When the Buddha spoke about dispelling resentment, he gave 5 means, and some of you know the simile, which I often speak to, but there's another 5 means next to that. He says one should first try to spread metta to that person, then you should try to spread compassion to that person, then equanimity, then you should reflect they are the owner of their karma, and if that doesn't work, you should not bring them to mind. And notice, as always, the Buddha's precision in teaching, he doesn't include mudita. I think he knows that's a big ask, actually. And also to note that as you practice, it's important to tune into the otherworldly metrics in terms of well-being. It's hard to bring to mind mudita for someone who's engaging in harmful action because you know it's actually not of benefit to them. And you know that it's not going to make them happier in the long run. That sort of worldly success has almost no bearing on happiness. And compassion is a very powerful tool in that case of just recollecting that this person is creating the causes for their own suffering, and probably suffering a great deal right now. And it's useful, find out about the childhood of those who you find yourself averse to. And often there will be a hidden trauma, a hidden wound that's, like many of us, is driving them or us. I know one world politician whose brother committed suicide, and I think he blamed himself largely for that, and that could be the cause of much of his actions in recent decades. So I think that's really important, but also to note that these Brahmaviharas, these aspects of loving kindness, it's not like the person you're giving them to can really often receive them. They're for you. You're the one that gets harmed by holding hatred in your heart. So finding where compassion can go, and often there's this impulse to spread it to someone else, but actually the proper motion is feeling how much it hurts to be angry, how much pain are you in waking up every morning, reiterating the same vehement you know, vitriolic internal dialogue towards someone you'll never meet, and it's useless and painful and honestly a bit insane. And how much does that burn and hurt? And can you just spread the loving kindness to yourself? And it's a much more human, intimate, and humble motion of the heart, but it's also much more authentic. And often that's the route to compassion, just, oh, this really hurts. This really hurts. And that's where metta can go. And if you cultivate it there, it will spread out naturally. But just to pause there with the politics and to say that, you know, people can really get alarmed that this moment is particularly dire. But if we'd been born 50 years ago, we would have been looking to the sky for nuclear bombs to be falling any moment, and there'd be conflict then. If it'd been 20 years before that, it would have been the Third Reich. Before that, revolutions elsewhere, the Great Depression, people around us starving. In the Buddha's time, famine, war. The Buddha, a beautiful vignette is to see how the Buddha dealt with that. And there's a king, or a Prince Ajatasattu, who murdered his father, King Bimbisara, who was one of the Buddha's chief disciples. And afterwards, Prince Ajatasattu came to the Buddha, and the Buddha received him, taught him, and held him with compassion. And by the end of that teaching, the prince, because he was not just refused outright, said, look, I did something bad. I killed my father, a good man. And the Buddha said, one who acknowledges a fault and determines restraint in the future grows in the Dhamma. And in the end, Prince Ajatasattu actually sponsored the first Buddhist council. The fact that we have these teachings well codified and preserved is because, largely, of that prince and that compassion. So just to step back from that conceit that our moment is different than the moments others grew up in. And it's not like we can't take action, we can't participate, but to know that we're in a long lineage of people holding a spiritual center in the midst of great tumult, and it's our job to hold that carefully and preserve that like sacred center in the midst of all that. And we can. And anger is never useful, never. An action taken out of love is always more powerful. Gotcha. Maybe one more question.
Thank you, Ajahn, for, I really liked what you just said. What my question is, yeah, we all know that anger, grudge, if we are holding it, it's painful inside us. But the thing is, also, Ajahn was saying that citta is something that we should be aware of, but not believe it, something like that. So the problem is that one part of our citta, or brain, will continuously generate that thing, and we don't have any control over that. So it will keep bringing that story like, hey, you should be angry, that person did that thing, and it will keep doing it. It will the moments that when we are hurt, it will generate the thoughts more often. So yeah, we all know that it's difficult, but if it is like involuntarily coming, what would you suggest? Like what? But does that, my question make sense? Okay, cool, thank you.
Yeah, the Buddha does talk about abandoning greed, hatred, and confusion. But there are times, like you're saying, where we just have pulled all the levers that we can, and we're up against the wall, and the wall is not coming down. So in those points, this is the place for the third foundation of mindfulness, knowing mind is mind. And the Buddha said here, when the mind is a mind of craving, one knows that the mind is a mind of craving. When there's the mind of anger, one knows the mind of craving, of anger. And that's an essential tool that we need to have in our tool belts, because we'll all reach that point. It's good to do what we can to try to abandon, to the extent to which it is a level of, as you said, temporary insanity. You know, the allure of anger and hatred is that there is partial clear seeing. You're able to see faults, oftentimes, not always. Not all anger is intelligent, and the kind of danger of anger is that it thinks it's always right. It always thinks it's always right in every way. Whereas sometimes there's a part of it that's right. You're seeing that's inappropriate. That's going to have huge effects for the world, this action. But yeah, it's something that we have to be skillful around, and learning and discerning what is the discernment, what is the clear seeing, and what is the emotion, the heat, the flame that we add onto that. And when we're coming from the flame, then we just set fire to the people around us. And unfortunately, all the politicians that we might hate, our hate towards them, hatred is so dangerous because it's a mood, it's a physiological state, which is just so easy to shift its object. And who are the people who are in our immediate environment? It's not the people who we hate on the highest levels. It's the people who we love the most on the closest levels. So our anger towards whatever, especially if we've been stoking it in this sense of righteous indignation, that so easily just shifts to finding fault with our wife or our husband or our child or our best friend. And it's dangerous in seeing that liability. And it's like there is a gratification. There is some form of happiness, even the happiness of Schadenfreude. Is that correct? Yeah. Of like enjoying the pain of others. There is that. But that's a coarse and ugly happiness. When you think of the happiest people you know, the most moral people that you know, yeah, the cleanest people that you know, like Schadenfreude, delighting in other people's suffering, is just not there. And their capacity to see rightly, but to not themselves be ablaze, which just distorts our capacity. The heat of it all, just, yeah, we're not seeing clearly. So taming that dragon, as somebody on the train said to me yesterday. So, do you want to say more, John?
I do think we have to wrap stuff up. But just to note with the politics and not bringing someone to mind, that fifth means just noticing what headlines or realms of politics really you find unable to not get their hooks in you, and just being more restrained around reading those particular news stories. You don't need to read every day those new headlines. You can chant too. Yeah, we had someone who labeled the teddy bear that they really loved a certain political leader and put it on near her shrine to bow to as a sort of source of compassion for her. So take it or leave it. I thought that was quite good, though. So a few things. I think we're going to skip the chanting request today because we have a special event on the first Saturday of every month, but we'll do that at the very end. Before then, often what we do is open this space for anyone who's new to these gatherings and has attended 3 times or less and is feeling a bit brave. Just raise your hand and maybe introduce, say your name and how you heard about us. No pressure, or at most just a little bit of pressure.
And it's my 3rd time, and I came here to my very good friend Nachika sitting next to me.
Welcome.
I'm Sarah. I'm here for the first time, and my friend Susie.
Welcome, Sarah. Susie. Yes. Yes. Oh, Steve, please. Steve, many of you will recognize him from our online community, and the fact that you took the time to come all the way up here, Steve, means a lot. Welcome. Someone in the way back, yeah. Welcome, Annie. Matt.
I'm Matthew. This is my 2nd time. Thank you so much for exposing us to all these very wide teachings.
Matthew has been part of our community for some time as well, and drove from Missoula as well, or Bozeman.
I'm Steve, another Steve, and I get abandoned by my family every Saturday, and I'm stuck babysitting 2 cats and 2 dogs, and this just so heard about it on the
Not the cats and dogs, but good. Welcome, Steve. Oh. Let's give 3 sadhus for Nicole and Scott. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Welcome, you two. Just to encourage those who are far away, listening on Zoom and elsewhere, we would love to see you. We have hospitality stewards who can help get you hosted. And eventually, when we get a monastery, the hope really is to have people move near here and make a community around this. And something very sacred is happening here, even if it's in a gym. Okay. Additionally, after this, we'll have the potluck. So people bring a wonderful set of offerings for all, and please partake, get to know one another. Zoom, there's a coffee hour where all of you can stay on afterwards. There's free books in the back. Monastics like us don't use money. Everything is freely offered here. And finally, just to make sure that if you're interested in signing up as an AV volunteer, to speak to our AV crew as well. But each, did you have the flyer? Did you have the flyer? Okay, okay. Sorry. We'll have a retreat in Winthrop on June 7th and 8th, but we'll have a flyer next week with the QR code. Once on the first Saturday of every month, we have the dessert devas and the celebration of birthdays for the coming month. And other events that people are kind of celebrating in their life. So if it's your birthday this month, which is May, if you're feeling brave, if you'd come up and form a line up here, and if you're also celebrating something in your life, a new job, a new marriage, etc., you can join that line kind of celebrating. If you're on Zoom, feel free to raise your electronic hand so you pop to the top of the queue. Be brave, people. Oh, yeah, no, they can continue to stand, yeah. Okay. So we'll pass a mic down, and if people can just say when their birthday is, so that, and take note, people, when their birthday is, and also just something you're grateful for in terms of this past year in the Dhamma, something the Dhamma's given you, etc., or just that you're grateful for.
10th, May 10th, 1954. And I'm grateful for Clear Mountain and the monastics and all of you.
May 28th, hard to believe. I'm not going to announce the year, but I've been away from Clear Mountain for a while, and I'm just grateful to see things thriving so much and to see so many friendly faces and the people that I've been close to. So, sadhu, everybody.
Jay was one of our founding board members and was instrumental in the first years with us, and so good to have you back, Jay.
My birthday is May 16th, and I'm grateful for the Dhamma generally.
Hi, I am grateful for all the loving kindness in my life, as well as discovering Clear Mountain a few months ago and the ajahns in this wonderful Sangha.
When's your birthday?
May 7th.
Oh,
Yes, you do. Oh, except you're like
So twins is here, birthday on May 7th, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to sit with everybody. It's certainly different than doing it in your own living room. It definitely means more and brings more gravity or calmness, so thank you.
May 26th, and I'm grateful for many years of Dhamma practice.
Dwayne, May 19th, thankful for coming to Clear Mountain, and especially last Saturday was a really cool and amazing day, so thankful for that.
Can we go to gallery view on Zoom so we can see anyone raising their hand there? And if you are raising your hand, feel free to unmute and say your birthday, something you're grateful for in the last year. Oh, Trevor, is there anyone waiting with their hand up? Please, person with your hand up. Or multiple.
Just a sec, I got it.
Okay.
Oh, Cheryl got the gallery.
Good. Susan. Susan, I think you're muted. Susan's still muted, I'm sorry. Oh, there we go.
There it goes. Thank you.
Gotcha, we can hear you. Go for it.
I'm May 6th, and I'm grateful to be alive today, another day to practice the Dhamma with all of you. Thank you.
And Susan visited us last week as well from California. So, oh, Carolyn.
Hi, I'm May 16th, 1966, and I'm grateful to become a part of this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. And let's just do a very cheery Clear Mountain sadhu, triple sadhu. All right. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Glad you were all born, and now that you're here at Clear Mountain, that's great. So, with that, that's the formal morning, and people can just interact with others, have food. A lot of people brought a lot of food, so there's enough for everybody, probably. And we'll just close down. We'll bow to the Buddha. Anybody who would like to, you're welcome to do that. Oh, yeah. Bonnie, who is the dessert deva today who made all the desserts for the birthday people? Melody and Noah. Way to go. All right.
Also, can I make an announcement super quick?
Nice. And Mark's got an announcement.
Yeah. Hi. I'm Mark. If you're signed up for the chanting for the Taizé service, we're going to do a practice session at about 11:30. So get some food, get some coffee, and pink hair, hard to miss. Find me at 11:30. All right. Thanks.
Sadhu, Mark. Those who want to bow, may. And we can wave goodbye to our friends on Zoom. Bye, Zoom friends. And as a reminder, Ajahn Kovilo's mom is named Paula, stepdad Arnie, Jayanta, Matt, and okay, good.